This conference will now be recorded.
So Ansible, what type of tool it is, right? We have discussed so far lot of types, right? We discussed about already SCM, SCM tool, source code management. What are the tools which can be used for SCM? This GitHub, Bitbucket, CVN, SVS, like this we have some SCM, source code management tools. Similarly, we have build tools, we have code quality tools, we have CI/CD tools. Similarly, build tools like Maven, Gradle for Java based, right? If it is a Node.js, you have a Gulp, Grunt. Like this, we have some build tools. Code quality management. We have a Sonar Cube. Similarly, we have a artifactories. What are the artifactories like Nexus, JFrog, etc. CI/CD tools, Jenkins, Bamboo, GitLab, Circle CI, Travis CI, right? Azure DevOps, right? Etc. So each tool is used for some purpose. Each tool is used for some purpose here, right? What is the whole purpose of SCM? That GitHub, whatever we learned, we are using this GitHub to maintain the source code, to maintain the source code. We are using these build tools. We are using these build tools to build the code, to package our code, to build our code, to create a application packages. What is the whole purpose of this code quality management, right? To check the quality of code, to check the quality, whether the developers are following the best practices. The best practices is the developers are writing the code as per the industry standards, right? We can validate the code against some quality. Code quality management. What is the whole purpose of these tools, Nexus or JFrog? To maintain the packages, the build packages. SCM is different, Artifactory is different. Are we going to maintain build packages in SCM tools? Are you going to maintain your jars, wars, or Docker images, whatever it is? No. Only source code. In Artifactories, we can maintain the build packages. That can be your jar, var, if you are using Docker, the Docker images, all those stuff. Artifactories. So what is this whole purpose of CI/CD? Continuous integration, continuous deployment, automation. To automate the process of checking the quality of the code, creating an application package, running the test cases, and deploying those packages into the deployment server. Automation, pipeline. So similarly, we have some other categories. Configuration management tool. Configuration management tools. configuration management. We have like some tools, Ansible, Chef, Puppet, SaltStack. These are like a configuration management tool. What is this configuration management? First of all, what is configuration management? What is configuration? Or configuration management? Configuration can be anything. Configuration can be anything like creating a user, creating a group, copying a file, installing software or uninstalling some software, anything. Configuration can be any task which we have to perform on servers. We call it as a host. Any task. The task can be, it can be installing software packages, installing, updating, or removing software packages. Or it can be copy files, or it can be changing the ownership, changing the permissions on the files. On the files, folders. Or it can be start, stop, restarting the services. Or it can be creating user, group, etc. Creating, deleting, anything. Configuration can be any task which we have to or we want to perform on servers, host. Now, before I deploy some application or any application, do I need to configure the server? Do I need to configure the server? Suppose I want to deploy some application, right? That can be any application like Java based application or Python based application or Node.js based application. Do I need to configure that server? That can be installing a software, that can be starting or stopping the services, that can be copying the files, anything. So far, how you guys have done the configuration, whatever you have done. Any server. So any server, whatever you have done, right? You guys have done manually. So you have lot of servers. So you have manually configured those servers, right? So you have some servers. This can be any server, whether you are using this server for Jenkins, whether you are using this server for Nexus, whether you are using this server as a deployment server, application server, whatever it is. So we have manually connected to this server. We connected to this server. and we have done the configurations. That configuration can be any task, whatever you want to perform, any task which you want to perform. So you connected to these servers, right? Suppose this is your Jenkins server. So you want to install an Jenkins in this server. Did you connect it to this server and executed some commands to install Java, some commands to install Jenkins and start Jenkins? Yes. Suppose you want, this is your Tomcat server, your application server. So we connected to this server and executed some commands, right? Manually. Now I have a lot of servers in real time. I have lot of servers in real time. I want to configure these servers, right? What is the problem with manual configurations? What are the problems with manual configurations? One thing, time consuming, time taken, time consuming. Other one, error prone, mistakes, human errors, right? If you miss to execute some command, some configuration, right? It may work, it may not work. If you have not properly executed your commands, right? So manual configurations are error prone, and also it is going to take the time. Now, instead of doing the configurations manually, I can automate the configurations also using configuration management tool. Configuration management tool. Configurations as a code. Configurations as code. Configurations as code. So this CI/CD pipelines, this Jenkins pipelines, can I call build and deployment as code? Build and deployment as code. That is what we are doing. As a DevOps engineer, we are writing the code. We are writing the code. As a DevOps engineer also, we are writing the code. But are we writing the code for developing the applications? No. We are writing code for automation. Build and deployment as a code. We are writing the code for automation. Build and deployment as a code. Suppose as a DevOps engineer, you need to configure some servers. Can I write that configurations also as a code using configuration management tools? Using configuration management tools, we can write the configurations as a code to configure the servers. Whatever you want to do in the servers, configuring, like installing some software. That can be any software, like Docker software, Jenkins software, Java software, Tomcat software, Kubernetes software, installing the required softwares, copying the files, changing the permissions. We can do any task, any configuration. Configurations as a code. We can do that using configuration management tools. So Ansible is a configuration management tool. Ansible is a configuration management tool. Using Ansible, I can do the configurations like this. One second. Okay, I think here it is already open. Okay. So instead of doing it manually, what I can do? I can bring configuration in between, configuration management in between, configuration management in between. So here, I can use one of the configuration management tool. Here. So here, this configuration management tool can do the configurations in your servers. Even though I have hundreds of servers, will I able to do the configurations in those hundreds of servers? We have hundreds of servers. We can use this configuration management tool to configure that server, right? So that can be any task, whatever command you want to execute, whatever script you want to execute, anything which you want to perform in this server is called as a configuration. Don't ask me, sir, creating a folder is a configuration, or installing a software is configuration, or executing some command is a configuration. Yes, whatever you want to do in this server, whether it's creating a file, executing a script, installing software, uninstalling software, any task which you want to perform on these servers, that I can call it as a configuration. So any task that can be creating a users in these machines, that can be installing some software in these machines, that can be copying some files to all these machines, that can be stopping the some service in these machines, any task, we call it as a configuration. So Ansible is a configuration management tool. There are two types of configuration management tools. Before I go for Ansible, we have two types of configuration management tools. Configuration management tools. One is pull based, another one is push based. One is pull based, another one is push based. So Ansible is basically falls under push based configuration management tool. Ansible falls under push based configuration management tools like these: chef, puppet, salt stack. Like this, we have this falls under pull based configuration management tool. So what is the difference between push based configuration management tool and pull based configuration management tool? So if it is, one second, let me close this. So what is difference between pull based and push based? Suppose this is pull based, let's say. So we have a configuration management server. This is your configuration management server. Your configuration server. So when I have a pull based, in whatever server I want to configure using this one, we need to have a agents in this machine. We need to have a agents in this machine. So these agents will pull the configurations. So these agents will pull the configurations, that configuration scripts here. This is not going to push. These agents will pull from this server where we have some configuration scripts. These agents, we need to have an agent installed in each and every machine which you want to configure using that configuration management agents. A stands for agent here. So these agents will pull the scripts, your configuration script, configurations as a code. So this agent, what is agent? Agent is one software. Agent is one software. Agent is nothing but some software. That software will contact this server to pull the configurations and run that script. But when it comes to Ansible, Ansible is a push-based architecture. What is the meaning of push-based architecture? Do we need any agent in Ansible to do the configurations? So when it comes to Ansible, Ansible is a push-based. So Ansible is a agentless configuration management tool. Ansible is a agentless configuration management tool. You don't need any agent in these servers. This is your actual servers, right? So you don't need any agents here. We call it as hosts, right? So here I have some hosts, some servers. Do I need any host here? Whatever servers I want to configure using Ansible, if I have hundreds of servers here, do I need to have an agent in each and every server if I am using Ansible? Not required. But if I am using pull-based configuration management tool, do I need to first install agent in each and every server which I want to configure using this configuration management tool in pull-based? Yes. So here, if it is Ansible, I no need to install agent here. It's an agentless configuration management tool. But category is same. Category is same, right? The configuration. Whatever I can do using Chef, will I able to do using Ansible also? Like whatever you can do using Jenkins, can I do same thing using GitLab or Azure DevOps or something else? Yes. So Ansible is a configuration management tool, agentless configuration management tool. Now here I have Ansible software. If I execute some commands, Ansible commands or scripts, does Ansible will connect to all these machines and execute that script or commands? Yes. It's an agentless configuration management tool. So Ansible is an open source configuration management tool, and also if required, can I use that Ansible as a deployment tool also if required? If required, we can use Ansible to deploy the applications also using Ansible scripts. But is Ansible replacement for Jenkins? Is Ansible replacement for Jenkins? No. Jenkins is different, Ansible is different, right? So if required, can I trigger Ansible commands or Ansible playbooks using Jenkins whenever I want to trigger? Yes, right? So Ansible is different, Jenkins is different. It's not a replacement for Ansible. Ansible is a configuration management tool using which we can do the configurations. So it's a Red Hat product. Red Hat product. It's an open source product, which means is it commercial? Do I need to pay any money if I want to use only Ansible? No, not required. So Ansible have some concepts. I will explain what is playbook, how to write playbooks and all those things. Ansible is implemented in Python language. Ansible is written in Python language. Does it mean, do I need to learn Python if I want to write Ansible scripts, Ansible playbooks? Not required. So Ansible playbooks or Ansible scripts we are going to write in the form of YAML, YML files, YML files. Ansible is playbooks or Ansible scripts we are going to write in the form of YML files, but internally Ansible is implemented using Python language. Ansible configure machines agentless manner. There is no agent. Then how it will configure? How it will configure? Ansible configure machines agentless manner using SSH. SSH. What is the meaning of SSH? Ansible machine, Ansible will SSH to these servers. Ansible will SSH to these servers to execute the scripts, commands. SSH. So Ansible is programmatically SSH to these servers to execute the scripts, your configuration scripts. This way, do we need Ansible, agent in this machine? Since this is only SSHing programmatically, not required. Agent is not required. It's an agentless configuration management tool. Ansible manages machines using what? Ansible manages machines or Ansible configure machines using SSH. Using SSH. Programmatically, it will SSH. Secure shell. Built on top of Python language. Sampath is asking, sir, you told agent is a software. What agent? Chef agent. If I want to configure server using Chef software, I need to install a Chef agent. If I want to configure a servers using Puppet, I need to install a Puppet agent. Agent is nothing but some software, guys, written for some purpose, like Tomcat. Tomcat is one software. What Tomcat can do? What we can do using Tomcat? What we can do using Tomcat? We can deploy the application, right? That is also one code. That is also one code, web server, application server. Similarly, agent is also one software. What is the purpose of that agent? If I install Puppet agent, will it able to talk to the Chef server? Will it able to understand what is Chef, how to run? No, right? So if I want to use Chef, I need to install Chef agents in that machines. If I want to use Puppet, I want to install Puppet agent in those machines. Agent is nothing but software. When it comes to Ansible, do I need to install any agent software here? Not required. Ansible connects using SSH. So Ansible is written in Python language. We'll get a lot of Python functionalities. But we are going to write the configuration scripts in the form of what? In the form of YML, right? So this is push-based architecture. Ansible is push-based architecture, not pull-based architecture. So before I install Ansible, let's understand Ansible architecture. Before I install and do some configurations using Ansible, let's understand Ansible architecture. So here in the right hand side, you see host 1, host 2, host 3. What are these hosts actually? What are these actually? Host 1, host 2, host 3. These are your servers. These are your servers. That can be application server, that can be database server, that can be web server, that can be Jenkins server, any server. You have servers where you want to do some configurations. So whatever I see here, all these components will be part of which machine? Whatever you see here, all these components is part of your Ansible machine. So suppose this is my Ansible server, right? This is my Ansible server. The moment I install Ansible, here we have a lot of concepts, lot of components in Ansible. One is host inventory. One is host inventory. One is very important concept here is host inventory. We have a host inventory here in this. We have a playbooks. We have a concept of playbook. We have a concept of playbooks. We have a concept of modules, core modules. Core modules. We have a concept of custom modules. Core modules, custom modules, and also we have a connection plugins. We have a connection plugins. So here, the machine in which you have Ansible, we can use all these concepts. Connection plugins. Like this. So in this machine, whatever you see here, this box, all these are part of your Ansible components, right? Ansible has a concept of host inventory. Ansible has a concept of playbook, core modules, custom modules, connection plugins. So host inventory. What is the meaning of host inventory? Ansible connects to your machines agentless. But how Ansible knows what are the servers it has to do the configurations, how many servers it has to do the configurations, what and all servers? How come Ansible knows which servers it has to configure? Do we need to provide somehow our server details, which machines it has to connect and do the configurations? If I have some servers, how come Ansible knows which servers to contact, which servers to configure? Where we will define those server details? What is host inventory here? In the accounting terminology, host inventory. What is inventory in accounting terminology? Inventory is nothing but stock. Stock. So here, host inventory. What do we maintain in the host inventory? Host inventory. Inventory are details of your host machines which you want to configure using Ansible. Your server details, your host servers details. There are two types of host inventories again. There are two types of host inventories again. Important interview question also. Static inventory and dynamic inventory. Static inventory and dynamic inventory. So static inventory, dynamic inventory. Inventory contains your host details. What is the meaning of host details? IP address or host name and SSH details like username, SSH, username with password or just passwordless. If you have a SSH keys copied already, you don't need a passwords, right? Username and password or just passwordless, username and SSH keys, you will have the host machine details like IP address or host name, username and password or username or SSH keys to connect to those machines from Ansible. There are two types of inventories here, static inventory, dynamic inventory. What is static inventory? It's a file. It's a file. It's a static file in which we can list and group servers, host details. It's a static file. What is the default location? What is the default location of the static inventory? So it's a default location is etc, Ansible and hosts. This is a file. This is a file in which we can define the host details. Suppose any server I have added to my infrastructure, I have added one more server. If I want to configure this server also using Ansible, in that case, do I need to define those server details in the static inventory? If I create any additional servers and if I want to configure those servers using Ansible, do I need to have those server details updated in the host inventory, static inventory? Yes. Suppose I have terminated some servers, do I need to update? I mean to say, do I need to remove that server details from host inventory? If I remove also, yes. So any change, you are adding some additional servers, you are terminating those servers, and if you want to configure those servers using Ansible, do I need to update my host inventory accordingly? Static inventory? It's a file. Yes, we need to do that. What is dynamic inventory? Very important interview question also. What is dynamic inventory? It's a script. It's a script. It's a script. It can be Python script. It can be shell script, or it can be YAML script. Any script. It's a code, basically. It's a code. Dynamic inventory is nothing but a script which will fetch host details, your server's details, dynamically from external sources like AWS, directly from AWS or Azure, if you are using Azure, or any other cloud, or from database, Suppose you have your server details in the database, it can connect to the database. It's a script. It can connect to the database and get the details, or it can talk to the AWS and get the details. It's a script. So if I am using dynamic inventory, if I am creating some servers in AWS and I am terminating those servers in AWS, will those server details will be reflected in my dynamic inventory script? Do I need to manually do any changes if I am using dynamic inventory? No, not required, because it is directly fetching the details from external sources. So when should I go for a static inventory? When should I go for a dynamic inventory? When should I go for a static inventory? When should I go for a dynamic inventory? So when your infrastructure is not keep on changing, you are not creating the servers and you are not terminating the servers more frequently, you are not creating a servers, you are not terminating the servers more frequently, your infrastructure is not so much dynamic. In that case, can I go for a static inventory? Yes. But if your infrastructure is dynamic, you are creating a servers, lot of environments very frequently, and if I want to configure those servers, in that case, can I go for a dynamic inventory so that it can fetch the details automatically? So inventory is nothing but your machine details which you want to configure using Ansible. Okay. Now, what is this playbook? What is playbooks in Ansible? Playbooks are nothing but your tasks. Playbooks are nothing but playbooks are nothing but your task, your configuration task. Playbooks are nothing but the configurations, basically tasks which you want to execute on host machines. So playbooks we are going to write in the form of what? YAML format. So the sample playbook, it will be something like this. We will discuss in detail something like this. We will have a tasks. This task can be anything like something like this. This is in the form of YML. So we have a tasks. These tasks will be executed against hosts. Hosts is nothing but servers. Here I said all in the sense all the servers which is part of what? All the servers which is part of my inventory. All the servers, which means whatever servers which is part of my inventory, whatever server details I am getting from the inventory. So these tasks will be executed against these servers. Like this, can I have a multiple tasks? Suppose I want to install some other software, or I want to copy some file to some server. I want to copy some file. So playbooks are nothing but your configurations as a code, your scripts. These scripts will be executed against hosts by Ansible. We have a task here. So how we are writing the tasks? To write these Ansible playbooks, we are using tasks. So how we are using these tasks? These tasks are written using modules. This is one module. This is one module. Modules in Ansible. This is one module. This is one module in Ansible. We can write a playbooks using modules, Ansible modules. We have a thousands of modules. We have a core modules, right? So these modules, using these modules, we are writing what? Using these modules, we are writing a playbooks. So the tasks, whatever task we are going to write, we are going to write those tasks with the help of modules. So this is one module, M is one module, copy is one module. Like this, we have a thousands of modules, hundreds of modules in Ansible, core modules. That module is nothing but what in the background? That module is nothing but one Python script. That module is nothing but one Python script, which comes by default. So do I need to write Python script? Or Ansible is having those modules, those scripts? So Ansible is having those modules, those scripts, right? We no need to write any Python script. Now, if required, can I create a custom module? Suppose I want to create my own module in Ansible. If required, custom module, yes, we can create a custom module. But if I want to create a custom module, then do I need to know Python? Yes, we should know Python, right? But do we really get a use case to write the custom module? Very rare. Very rare you will get a use case to write the custom module, because we have a thousands of modules already available, hundreds of modules for any normal general use cases. For general use cases, there are a lot of modules already available. So you can use those existing modules, which comes by default. If required, you can create a custom module. So connection plugins. What is connection plugins? We have a connection plugins also. Host inventory, playbooks, core modules, custom modules. This connection plugins is nothing but what? Ansible will use these connection plugins. Ansible will use these connection plugins to connect to these machines. To connect to these machines, right? So using Ansible, if required, can I configure any server, whether it's a Red Hat server, whether it's a Ubuntu server, whether it's a Windows server? Will I able to configure? Yes, we can configure any server. If required, we can configure Windows server also. If it is a Windows server, what connection plugin it should use? There is one connection plugin called WinRM. WinRM, Windows Remote Machine. That is one connection plugin. So if I have a Windows servers, it can connect to the Windows servers also and do the configuration using this connection plugin. If it is a Linux machines, it will use SSH for connecting to these servers. We have a connection plugins. Now, I can define my server details. I can define these server details where? I can define these server details where whatever servers I want to configure, I can define in the host inventory. And whatever configurations I want to do, whatever scripts I want to execute, we have to write in the form of what? Your configuration scripts. whatever you want to configure in these servers, in the form of what we need to write? We are going to write in the form of playbooks. Playbooks. So to write these playbooks, what are we going to use? Modules, right? We are going to use modules to write the playbooks. Okay. So connection plugins. It will be used to connect to these servers, right? Sampath is asking one basic question. Sir, we use mobile xterm to connect to the Linux from Windows. Mobile xterm is what? Mobile xterm is one SSH client software. SSH client software. If you want to connect to the Windows machines, what software? By default, it comes in your Windows. RDP, remote desktop protocol. That is one protocol actually. If you execute MSTSC in your Windows, it will open one page where you can connect to the remote desktop, RDP, right? So this Ansible is going to use one protocol to connect to the Windows machine. What protocol it is using? This Ansible machine is going to connect to the Windows machine using what protocol? This WinRM. That is what the connection plugin. What I am trying to say here. It is going to use this plugin to connect to the Windows machine. Windows remote machine. It is going to use this connection plugin to connect to the Windows machines. Now, let's try to install Ansible now. Let's try to install Ansible now. Now, Ansible, can I install Ansible in Windows machine? Will I able to install Ansible in Windows machine? Interview also they'll ask this question. Can I install Ansible in Windows? No. We cannot install Ansible in Windows. We cannot install Ansible in Windows. Ansible doesn't support Windows. But using Ansible, will I able to configure Windows? Using Ansible, will I able to configure Windows? That is possible. But will I able to install this Ansible? By installing, can I install this Ansible in Windows? No. This Ansible should be in Linux, but this Ansible can connect to the Windows server to do the configurations. Ansible cannot be installed in Windows. What about Mac? Mac is built on top of what? Mac is built on top of what? Mac is basically what? Mac is also a Linux. So Mac is also built on top of Linux architecture, Linux only with UI. That's it. So Ansible cannot be installed in Windows, but using Ansible, will I able to configure Windows machine? That is again, yes, that is possible. That is possible. Now let me install Ansible. Let me install Ansible in one of the server first. Then we will see how to do the configurations using Ansible. Hope everyone has AWS account, right? Already. So here I am going to create one server. I am going to create one server to install Ansible. Suppose you are not at all using AWS, you are using your own data center, on-premise environment, on-premise data centers. Can't I use Ansible in my on-premise infrastructure? You can use anywhere. You can install Ansible in public cloud or private cloud. That doesn't matter. You need one server. You need one server where I can install Ansible. So everyone has AWS. I am demonstrating Ansible in AWS. So let me create an instance. I am creating one server. As I already told, Ansible can be installed in Linux, but does it should be Red Hat or can it be any other Linux? Can I install Ansible in Amazon Linux if required? Can I install Ansible in Ubuntu if required? Can I install Ansible in CentOS if required? Yes, any Linux. It no need to be Red Hat. Any Linux, I can do that. It no need to be Red Hat. Any Linux. It can be Amazon Linux, it can be Red Hat, it can be CentOS, it can be Ubuntu. So let me create one server to install Ansible. So I am taking this Red Hat AMI. For practicing purpose, is t2.micro is sufficient? Yes, t2.micro is sufficient. You no need to go for high configuration server. So t2.micro is sufficient. I am creating a server in this network. The default network, whatever we have in AWS, right? In this subnet, I'm giving some tag as Ansible server, AWS tags. So I'm creating one server. Here I will install Ansible. I will install Ansible in this machine once the server is up. So what is the prerequisite software in this machine which I want to install along with Ansible? The Python software. Now let me connect to this machine. Once the server is ready, I'll connect to this machine. If you already have a machine, do you need to create another one? Not required. Wherever you want to install, you can install. You already have an instance. You no need to create another server. In that existing server itself, you can install Ansible. So now I created this server in which I'll install Ansible. Let me connect to this once this is ready. So I'm connecting to this this AWS server in which I will install Ansible. Now, anywhere, guys, can I install Ansible in Jenkins? Yes, why not? If you install Ansible in Jenkins server, in my pipeline also, will I able to run my scripts, my Ansible scripts within my pipeline also if required? Will I able to execute Ansible commands if I have an Ansible installed in my Jenkins itself? Yes, anywhere. Now I have this machine in which I am going to install Ansible. So what is the use of Ansible in Jenkins pipeline? What is the use of Ansible in Jenkins pipeline? Can anyone tell me? If you know what is Jenkins, what is Ansible, you can answer this. I already explained what is Ansible. I already explained what is Ansible at high level, even though you don't know how to write playbooks, but what is Ansible, you already know. What is Jenkins? Jenkins is used to execute some code whenever there is a change in your code, or you can do it periodically. So now using Jenkins, if I want to configure the servers using Jenkins, I mean to say, if I execute my Jenkins pipeline, that pipeline should contact or connect your host machines and do the configurations. Can I do that with both Jenkins and Ansible together by using both Jenkins and Ansible together? Now let's take this use case. Let's take this use case. Now I have some servers. Now I want to do some configurations in these servers. I can bring Ansible. I can bring Ansible here. And if I execute some script, Ansible playbooks, does this Ansible will do the configurations for me? Does this Ansible will do the configurations for me? Now instead of doing it manually, can I do the same thing from Jenkins pipeline? Instead of I execute this playbook manually, can I do the same thing from Jenkins pipeline? So let's say this is developer. Let's say this is developer. So can I maintain host inventory and playbooks also as part of my version control systems? That is also code, configurations as a code. If required, can I maintain my host inventory, playbooks also as part of SEM? Whatever code. Now, instead of I manually do this, so if I have a Jenkins in place, can I do the same thing in my pipeline? It can clone this code, it can clone that code. If required, will I able to trigger that playbook if I have Ansible installed in this machine, or in this machine, or you have a separate slave or agent in which you have Ansible? You can will you able to execute this in the master machine and Jenkins master node, or if you have a slave in which you have installed Ansible, will you able to trigger this using pipeline also if required? Whatever tasks you want to execute, whether you want to install some software in these machines, or you want to copy some files, let's say var file. Let's say you have a var file generated. Now I have 10 application servers. I have 10 application servers. Now, instead of copying this var file to each and every server using SCP publish over SCP, or using SCP command, now can I have a playbook written, and can I have a task that playbook can copy the file to all the servers? Any automation, right? You can install Ansible. You can install directly Ansible software. You no need to install any plugin. In Jenkins server, if you install Ansible, Does Ansible commands works? Will I able to execute Ansible commands or Playbook commands, whatever it is, if I have a Ansible installed in this Jenkins machine or slave machine? Configurations as a code, right? You can do that. You can trigger that configuration playbooks, or you can trigger that task using Jenkins also if required. But Jenkins is different, Ansible is different. Both are two different, right? Anything, whatever you want to do, right? Whether you want to install a software, whether you want to deploy application, anything you want to do. But are you going to use Ansible for all, any, like everywhere? No, based on your requirement. Now let's say I am using Docker Swarm, right? I am using Docker Swarm. In that case, to deploy the containers in Docker cluster, do I need to contact each and every server if I'm using Docker Swarm or Kubernetes? Do I need to connect each and every server to deploy that containers in the cluster if I'm using Docker Swarm? No, not required. Only controller, only the master. In that case, do I really bring Ansible? Really need to bring Ansible in between if I just want to talk to this guy to deploy all the applications? Not necessarily required, not necessarily required. You can only talk to the master. But if you want to do that also, will you able to use Ansible to execute some command in this Docker Swarm machine or Kubernetes machine? Yes, you can do that, but unnecessarily you don't bring Ansible in between. It is not like everywhere you will use it, based on your requirement. If you want to do some configurations in n number of servers, then Ansible is good. If you want to do the configurations just in one or two servers, do you really bring Ansible in between? Not required, right? Is everyone clear? How can I use Ansible along with Jenkins also? Okay. Now, can we proceed with installation? Do we still have any questions or queries in between, like what is Ansible, what is Jenkins? I hope everyone is clear now. Now, let me install Ansible here. As per the documents, here, I have given, I asked you to create an Ansible user in that machine. But is it mandatory? Again, I ask you to do this. As per the document, is it mandatory? It's not mandatory. You can install Ansible as any user. You can install Ansible as any user, but as per the best practices, I am doing it. It is not mandatory to create an Ansible user, then install using Ansible user. It is not mandatory. We can install with the default user also. You can install Ansible as a EC2 user also. It is not mandatory. But as per some standards, I am doing that. Okay. So first, what I am doing, you are already familiar with Linux. What I am trying to do using these two commands, whatever I have highlighted. I am creating one user called Ansible, and I am setting the password for that Ansible user of whatever my choice. Then what I am trying to do here in the second step, I am giving a sudo access, sudo permissions. Sudo access, sudo permissions. Here, third step, by default, does password based authentication will be enabled? Suppose I want to connect to this server. I want to connect to this server as an Ansible user. As an Ansible user, does password based authentication will be enabled? Does password based authentication will be enabled? No. But will I able to connect to this machine? Will I able to connect to this machine as an Ansible user using PEM file? Using PEM file, will I able to connect to this machine as an Ansible user? No. No guys, PEM file is what? It's a combination of key value pairs, public key and private key. So the PEM file whatever we have, that is what key guys? That is what key, the PEM file whatever we have, that is what type of key? It's a private key. It's a private key. The server, this user, EC2 user has a public key of that PEM file. In which folder I can see that? In the current user, EC2 user, SSH folder, we have a authorized keys. So this is the public key of that private key. But does Ansible user will have this key, this authorized key in the Ansible user SSH folder? No. No. That's why you cannot connect with PEM file. But if I have this authorized keys in the Ansible user SSH folder, then will I able to SSH using that PEM file? Yes. So clear. So that is the key, combination of public key and private key. So these are basics. I'm just again making sure that how SSH works. So if I'm creating a Ansible user using the PEM file, will I able to connect to that machine as an Ansible user? No, because that Ansible user will not have a PEM file. So that's why what I am trying to do here. That's why what I'm trying to do here, I'm setting a password. Then by default, password based authentication will be disabled. If I want to enable password based authentication, do I need to do some changes in this folder, and do I need to restart this service? Yes. Again I am repeating, is this mandatory to install Ansible? No, not mandatory. Can I directly go and install Python from here? Can I directly start from here also as a EC2 user, default user, Ubuntu user? You can do that. But I am doing for some best practices. Okay. So let me do this. So what I am trying to do? I am creating a user called Ansible. I am setting a password for this user. You set password of whatever your choice. I have set the password of my choice. Then what is the next step? What is the next step? Sudo. I am using sudo, vi sudo. Because as a normal user, EC2 user, will I able to give sudo access? No. And again, if you switch to the Ansible user and you execute this command again, will it work, guys? Because I see a lot of people are doing the mistakes, small mistakes. First of all, you don't have a sudo access to the Ansible user. You cannot execute this command as an Ansible user, because I see a lot of students are doing mistakes like this, and they are sharing the screenshots, or this is not working. So default EC2 user already have a sudo access. So as a EC2 user with sudo permissions, will I able to modify this va sudo file? Yes. So I am doing that. Because basics itself, lot of people are struggling. Lot of complex scenarios people are implementing, but people are struggling at basics. So basics should be very strong, guys. I see a lot of people do the lot of complex automations, but they are struggling with basics. If you know the basics, so we can be expert. Now here I am giving Ansible, right, all, which means sudo access. What is this option? No pass WD all. Whenever I use sudo command, if I don't set this one, is it going to ask the password? Is it going to ask the password whenever I use sudo? Yes. I don't want that to happen. If I say no pass WD all, which means whenever I use sudo command, is it going to ask the password? No. That's what I am doing here. So I have given sudo access to the Ansible user. Then password based authentication. Do I need to make some changes, settings in the file? Which file? Where is that file? etc sshd config. In this file, we have this password based authentication. It is commented. It is commented. I'll uncomment this one and I'll comment this one. I will comment this one. I'll uncomment this one. Then will it reflect without restarting SSHD service? No. So let me restart. Sudo service SSHD restart. This is done. So I created an Ansible user. I set the password. I gave sudo access. I've enabled the password based authentication. I hope you guys already know this one. In Linux, you might have already created a user, enabled the password based authentication. Nothing complex, nothing fancy I am doing here. Nothing complex, nothing fancy I'm doing here. I just created one user, right? Now, I will install Ansible now. So before installing Ansible, what I am trying to do? Switching the user. Since I already have a sudo access, EC to user, when I am switching the user as an Ansible user, is it going to ask password for Ansible? No, it is not going to ask because root will never ask password. So I am switching to the Ansible user, sudo su Ansible, and make sure you are in the Ansible user directory. Make sure you are in the Ansible user home directory. As of now, in which home directory you are? While switching itself, I can use one option. What option I can use so that it will switch and change the directory also? Hyphen. Now, if I miss that, can I do this cd tilt symbol? If I miss that sudo hyphen option, can I use this? Now, in which directory? I am Ansible home directory. Now, let me install Ansible. Before installing Ansible, what is the software which I am trying to install? Python. Guys, as I told, I will take session till 9:15. As I already communicated, I have still another 15 minutes. We will finish the installation. Okay. So I am trying to install Python. I am trying to install Python in this machine, Ansible machine. Python is installed. Now I am setting the alternatives. What is the meaning of alternative? If you see, even though I install Python, when I am checking like this Python hyphen version, am I getting the output? What version of Python is installed if I'm using like this Python? No. I have to use Python 3. So even though I use Python, I want to point to Python 3. Can I set the alternatives? Linux. Hope you already know all these things, right? So we are setting the alternative. Even though I use Python, it will point to Python 3, right? So I'm setting the alternative. Now, even though I use Python, is it pointing to Python 3 now after setting the alternative? Yes. Then I will install Ansible. Ansible can be installed in many ways. Ansible can be installed in many ways. Installation doesn't matter. If you know only installation, you are not a DevOps engineer. Installation can be in many different ways, right? If you know only installation, you are not a DevOps engineer guy. Don't by heart, don't hard code any commands. I suggest don't learn that way. Don't by heart the commands. Any command that can be. Understand the concept and apply the concept. That is most important. Installation can be done in many ways. So I can install using package manager. I can install using package manager. Yum. Otherwise, I can install using you can install using pip. There is a one more software called pip, Python package manager. You can do that using pip also. In real time, no one will remember all these things, guys. If they ask me to do some installation, I will refer the official website. I will refer the official website. I can't remember any URL. No one can remember that URL also. I know what is Ansible. I know what is Jenkins. For what purpose Ansible has to be used. For what purpose Jenkins has to be used. For what purpose Docker has to be used. I know all these concepts, but I don't by heart or I don't remember any commands. I go to official website if I want to install something. If I want to install Jenkins, I go to this website. I'll check what is the requirement. If I want to install in Linux, what is minimum requirement, right? What needs to be done, like this I'll follow. Don't ever by heart this one. If you only know this one and you don't know how to use Jenkins, for what purpose using Jenkins, you are using Jenkins, does it make any sense? Does it make any sense? If you by heart this one, you don't know what is Jenkins. So don't ever learn this way. Don't by heart. Don't blindly execute whatever we are executing in the class also. Understand what we are trying to do. Since Bhaskar sir or Balaji sir has given line 1, do this, line 2, do this. Don't ever follow. Follow the document, but understand why we are doing this. Why we are doing this. Can't I do without this? Can it be done in any other way also? Think that way. Don't blindly execute. Because if I give this installation instructions to the 10th standard guy, will they able to do the installation for me, Ansible installation? Yes, right? So you follow the document. I am not saying don't follow the document. You follow the document and understand why we are doing this or why we are doing this. Can't we do in another way also if required? Learn that way. That is most important. Okay. So I am trying to install using this package manager. First, I am adding a package, Apple release. Without installing this package manager, without installing this package manager, you will not have Ansible. If you see, if I directly execute sudo yum install Ansible, What I am getting now? What I am getting? What it is trying to say? Unable to find a Ansible package. So that's why what I am trying to do here, I am directly installing Ansible from this package manager, Apple release, right? So if I execute this way, it will download that package information and it will install Ansible also. It does both. Basically, it is downloading that package information. Once this is done, once this RPM, this package manager information is been added, then if I execute this yum install Ansible, it will work, because this package is part of this release, this artifact. So now Ansible is installed in this machine. Now Ansible is installed. You verify. Once this is done, Ansible will be installed. Now if I want to configure or connect with some servers, can I connect to those servers and do the configurations using Ansible? Now if you see, Ansible is installed. Now Ansible version. Version. So what version of Ansible is installed as of now? What version of Ansible? 2.9.27, 2.9x, which is using Python 3.6, right? So this is Ansible installation. Now using this Ansible, I want to connect to some machine. Using this Ansible, I want to connect to some machines. Now I don't have any machine. Let me create some machines. These are your actual machines, your host machines. I'm creating some machines. I don't have any machines. If you have any existing machines, will you be able to connect to those machines to do the configurations also? If you already have some machines, existing machines, yes. So I don't have any machines. I'm creating two servers here. Two servers. Now, what port? Because Ansible is a agentless configuration management tool. Ansible connects using SSH. So these are Linux machines. What port should be opened if Ansible has to connect? If it is Linux machine, port 22, SSH port. So this port is opened, right? Let me create the server. Now I have a servers, two more servers. Now if I just provide IP address in host inventory, will it able to connect, guys? If I just provide this server IP in this machine, will it able to connect? This is my server. This is my host one, let's say. Host one. Let's say this is my host two. This is my host two, let's say. This can be any server. This can be your JFrog server. This can be your Jenkins server, whatever it is. Now, this is my Ansible server. So what is the default location of host inventory in this server? What is the default location of host inventory? The static inventory. I am demonstrating first a static inventory. So what is the default location of static inventory? etc/ansible/hosts. As of now, did I provided any server details here? No. I can just test the connectivity like this. What this command does? I am trying to execute Ansible command. What this command does? It's not a normal ping. It's not a normal ping. It's SSH test. Ansible will try to SSH and verify with whether it will be able to SSH or not. I'm saying all. But as of now, do I have any machines, any servers defined in my host inventory? Why I am getting this one? What it is saying? Hosts is empty. Because did I provided any server details in my host inventory? No. Now, if I just provide these servers IP addresses, is it going to work? Now let me take this server. Guys, will I able to, this server, will it able to communicate with these servers using private IP? Do I really need a public IP? Do I really need a public IP? Because this one and this one all are in same VPC, same network. Will they able to communicate without public IP? With private IP also, will it able to communicate? Yes. So take the private IP. Take the private IP. Don't take the public IP. Because if you start this server and if you start this server, will the public IP will keep changing? Yes. But does private IP will change? No. So let me take the private IP of this server. First, change the ownership to the Ansible user for etc Ansible folder. First, change the ownership to that folder. chown Ansible Ansible recursively for which folder? In which folder I have a host file? In this folder, etc Ansible folder. So I'm changing the ownership. In that case, as a normal Ansible user, will I able to modify that host file after changing this ownership? As a normal Ansible user also, will I able to modify the host file? Because I'm changing the ownership. For that purpose only we are changing the ownership. Now I'm editing that file, Ansible hosts file. Now I will explain tomorrow in detail. I'm just providing an IP address here. I'm just providing an IP address here. You can give range also. Range in the sense, I will explain that tomorrow. I'm giving individually. You cannot give like this. You cannot give like this. That is different. You cannot give like this. In a different way you can give. Now I am providing just IP addresses here. Those two machines. If I just have an IP address, will it able to do any configuration? If I execute any command or playbook, will it able to connect? So for the first time it is asking this. You know what is this? Now Ansible is trying to SSH to those machines. For the first time, whenever it is going to SSH, right? Does SSH will ask you to accept that authenticity, that fingerprint, host key checking? Yes. So it is asking me that. I can say yes. Now why it is not able to SSH? I can say another time yes. Why it is not able to SSH? Why it is not able to SSH? Because as a which user it is trying to connect now? As a which user it is trying to connect to that machine 168 and 218? As a which user it is connecting? As an Ansible user. Do we have an Ansible user in these machines? Do we have an Ansible user in these machines? These two machines? No. That's why. So if you just provide IP address, will it able to SSH? No. You need to provide how it can SSH. How it can SSH. So I'll continue tomorrow, guys. I'll continue tomorrow. I just installed Ansible in one machine. I just installed Ansible in one machine. and I just created two servers here. I have not done anything in these servers. These server details I have updated in my host inventory. We are not able to SSH. But as a EC2 user, can we connect it with IP? You try, Sampath. You will get the answer. From one system to another system, will I able to connect whatever user, whether other server also has a EC2 user, but without the passwords, without passwordless keys, does any server will accept you? No, right? That is security basics. So tomorrow I'll continue, guys. How can we, how many ways this Ansible can connect to these machines, SSH, right? I'll continue tomorrow. So today, just create an Ansible server and install Ansible. We'll continue tomorrow. If anyone has any question, feel free to ask the questions. Yeah or no, you can ask. If you want to drop off, feel free to drop off. So just I'm trying to answer the questions if anybody has. If you don't have any question, feel free to drop off. If I deploy applications in a Docker Swarm cluster, can I access the application using any IP of the server which is part of the cluster? Yes. So you have a Docker Swarm cluster or Kubernetes cluster for the sake. It no need to be the IP in which your container is running. It can be any IP of the server which is part of that cluster. That you will understand in Docker. So that you can understand in Docker. That I will explain. As a DevOps engineer, what are the common playbooks we write as a DevOps engineer? Any configuration script, guys. Requirement, based on the requirement. Suppose there is a requirement. You want to set up the Kubernetes cluster using Ansible. You don't want to manually execute a commands to set up the Kubernetes cluster. Let's say self-managed. Whatever commands you have executed manually to set up the Kubernetes cluster or HTTPD, Jenkins, whatever software, will I able to have all those things as a playbook tasks, whatever I have done manually, and if I execute that playbooks, it will work. What is cluster means that you will understand now, or not now, that you will understand once you go for a Docker Swarm and Kubernetes. Arnav has some background on Kubernetes and Docker. He was asking that question. So you will understand once we go for a Docker Swarm, Kubernetes, what is Docker, what is Kubernetes, what is cluster, you will understand there, not here. Any other questions? If not, I'll wrap up the session for today, guys. We'll continue tomorrow. Try to install Ansible and try to do whatever I have done so far. I'll continue tomorrow from here. Thank you. I'll share the document.